Welcome to MidLIFE Matters, where we celebrate women's wisdom and wit. I'm Georgian Lussier, your host, and I am delighted to introduce today's guest, Eileen McCaughern, a pioneer who has rescued over 5,000 greyhounds and recently recovered from a serious stroke. With her today is Conan, her pet, who's a wonderful example of a magnificent greyhound. Welcome, Eileen.
Thank you, and thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Over 5,000 greyhounds are indebted to you, and please tell us how you started with this. I understand you were in the horse world first.
Yes, horses were my passion. From horses, I went on to greyhounds, and I was out with a group of handlers from the track at New Hampshire. Plainfield wasn't open yet in Connecticut. And I asked the magic question, what happens to these dogs when they no longer race? Well, I didn't realize that they needed help. So from that point, I went on to the track, drove down to the track to pursue it a little more. And that day, I got my first greyhound, Terry Canary. They were destroying 14 dogs that day. And if I had known at the time what I know now, I would have taken all 14. They're wonderful, and Terry Canary's been my inspiration ever since.
So this was, I believe, in 1973.
Yes.
And tell us how you came to be aware of the greyhounds. It was through a horse connection, correct?
Yes. At UConn, I was going to school, and I was also teaching riding. I taught 150 kids how to ride. And one of the riders said, "Oh, my dad has a farm out here. So would you like to see the greyhounds?" I said, "Would I?" So I went down and visited the greyhounds, and I was sold. Loved them all to pieces. And I realized at that time that I had to help in any way I could.
So you had this first greyhound, and were you in school at the time?
Yes.
But you were able to bring the greyhound
to as many places as I could, to talk like a broken record, to say how available they were and how they needed homes, and I went from there.
Okay.
Yes.
And so in the past 40 years, you've been a rock star in terms of appearing on TV, radio. You've lobbied at the state level. You received several prestigious awards. So let's see, Joan Rivers, The Today Show, Positively Connecticut, Dateline, Prime Connecticut.
Prime time,
and most impressively perhaps to me, or significant, Animal Planet's 2008 Hero of the Year Award. So did you ever imagine you would get this national and state recognition?
I never even thought about it. All I really wanted to do was to help the greyhounds. But no, I can never imagine, how far and wide I've become. It's wonderful because every news media really spreads the word more and more. And that's what we need is a lot of help to place these dogs.
So you started in 1973 and then you went on to form a nonprofit.
Correct.
Around what year was that?
It was
developed?
about in the 80s sometime. Yes.
And were there any other greyhound rescues at that time?
No, I was the only one, and that's what made it even more meaningful. Rescue groups weren't a thing yet, like they are today, but no, they certainly weren't, and they just needed so much help back then. I would do meet and greets at the tracks that were around, and that's Plainfield, and Bridgeport came much later.
Okay. Today there are other groups, as I understand.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So your pioneer work has sprouted.
Yes, a friend of mine always says, "See what you started?"
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
What do you think helped you have the wherewithal to say go and talk to people at the state and try to get funding and all the different advocacy work that you've done?
I think the dogs themselves speak for themselves, really. And, to own one is to just really appreciate the breeding and what they're all about. They're wonderful pets, and I truly think they know they've been rescued.
I believe that. I've rescued animals, and I always say they are so grateful.
Yes.
Right, dogs.
Yes.
So tell us about the Greyhound. What about the breed and characteristics?
They're wonderful. You can't ask for a better pet. I think they're the closest to people that you're going to get. They have so many wonderful characteristics. And some of them get along with a cat, while others don't. What we do is we try to match when they come home to what they have at home. If they have children, or if they have a cat, if they have another little dog. So they fill out an application form first, telling me what they have, and then we go from there. But they, for the most part, they don't bark, and they just enjoy being house pets.
Do they come from breeders?
Yes, the breeders, they go to the track, and they're at the track training to be racing material, and then from the racing material, they come home when they no longer can race.
And what is their life like at the track?
Well, there are 1,000 dogs at any given track at any given time. And from there, they're in crates. You know, that's how they keep the dogs at the facilities. It's the only way they can keep the dogs because they have dog fights if they don't.
Right. So tell us about Conan. You know, how old is Conan? How many races? And
Conan is now 10 years old, and he raced, and he was a wonderful racer. His name was Colossus when he raced. Oh, guess he still knows that name.
Yeah.
And he raced like 90 races, and he was excellent. He was still winning and racing at the time that I picked him up, and I could not part with him. So it was love at first sight.
And about how old are they when they are really out of their prime in terms of racing? Like, what's the span of years?
They're like people. They could go anywhere from 2 years on up. They're graded A through J, and J is the lowest end, and that means they're coming to me then.
Okay.
And A is, you know, the fastest, so they're graded off.
And are they graded over a period of time? Like they could start off as an A and then end up as a C?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. And so about how old was Conan when you...
Conan was about 4 when I got him. And I usually get him even when they're still babies, like when they're 2-year-olds.
They really don't have a typical experience of living in a home then, or even in a yard.
No. They don't know what stairs are.
Yeah.
They haven't a clue. Nope. All they know is the crate and the dirt track.
And Conan is about how many pounds?
Conan is about maybe 75, 80 pounds. He needs a diet. No waste.
Is it easy to keep a Greyhound in the home?
Yes, they're couch potatoes. They find the nearest couch, and they say, oh, this is mine. This is what retirement is all about.
Okay.
And they jump on it.
Yeah, because they've been in crates or racing, so they go from doing 0 to 100, right?
That's right.
And then they, if lucky enough, you come their way, and then again, lucky enough, they get adopted, or you keep them.
Yes.
Because you have how many dogs at home now?
I have 5 at home now and 3 needing homes.
Okay, so you have 3 that are available for adoption right at this very time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, your work with these Greyhounds has taken you into Europe.
Yes.
And globally in terms of placements and also some unique opportunities to bring a dog back. Tell us the story about the person who, I believe you had the dog and then he wasn't able to get back into the country after 9/11, and you ended up keeping the dog longer. And then what happened?
Well, then I heard from him by email. And he says, oh, I found a picture of Tosh. His dog's name was Tosh. He was from Belgium. And I said, would you like me to bring him back to you? He said, would I? I think the plane reservations were made before I finished the email. So I went to Belgium. He says, you think you'll recognize me? I said, we're going to find out. So we found out that he went right over to him at the airport. Just loved him to pieces. You know, it was interesting bringing him on the plane because I had to get a health certificate. I had to get everything ready for him. I had to put wheels on the crate. And I think I was more nervous than the dog. And
the Animal Planet Award, tell us how that process worked, and then you got a trip, I believe, right?
Yes.
You took your volunteers.
Yes. Yep. It was really, I think, the most touching thing I ever experienced because, I just love placing these dogs. So it was just a treat to see. It was 8,200 people, and then they narrowed it down. It was by people's choice, the vote, and it was interesting seeing what else I had out there. Like there was a bat person, and there was a horse person, cat person. So there was a number of heroes, but they nominated me, and I won it. I was so surprised I won Animal Planet Hero of the Year. And Discovery came down, I think it was a group of 8, and they taped me, and then they said, okay, you did great, but now you have to talk faster. I said, I can't talk any faster. Okay, so then they said, well, you can go anywhere you want to go. Where would you like to go for a trip? And we went to Ireland. I always wanted to see Ireland, but never thought it would. We saw Ireland, and they made arrangements so I could see all the tracks in Ireland and talk to many people that had greyhounds out there. So, and I brought my volunteers with me, so it was great, giving back once again.
Absolutely. I just think that's the thrill of a lifetime.
It was very touching. Yes, indeed. It was. It was.
You built a career as a paralegal.
Yes.
You also did other work, you were telling me, in health and safety occupation.
Yes.
And your paralegal work was patents and trademarks.
Correct.
It sounds pretty technical.
Yes, very much so.
And you worked globally.
Yes.
In terms of where the patents were originating, going to, etc. How did you manage working full-time and still being such a strong advocate?
Greyhounds usually came on the weekends. The halls would come on the weekends. So I would devote my weekends to picking up whatever dogs I could, meeting with whatever people I could that wanted to adopt a greyhound, and then going back to work full-time. So it was tough, but I was busy every step of the way.
Well, I know in the article I picked up about the Hero of the Year award, it talked about you having a couple of part-time jobs as well.
Yes, yes. I tried dabbling in real estate. I found that I really couldn't, though I placed in, I sold homes, but I really couldn't pick it up as a business, part-time. I just devoted myself to my full-time job.
And moving into another amazing part of your story, you recently suffered a stroke that was very serious.
Yeah.
Could you tell us how that came about?
It was tough. One minute I was up, and the next minute I was down. I was home for 2.5 days on the floor, and work knew something was wrong, so they called. But I thought I was paralyzed because I could not get up. I was on the hardwood floor. So my boss came to my home, and then he called state police. And state police took me down to Yale, New Haven. I was in a coma for 15 days, and then they transferred me up to Gaylord. And between the two, I know they saved my life. And I was at Gaylord learning how to walk and talk again. And it was an experience. But here I am.
Well, that's inspirational to all of us, so I'm so happy you're sharing that story with us. So you were home alone.
Yes.
And I think you told me you could hear maybe someone on the phone. Maybe you weren't in a coma at that point.
That's right. Work tried calling me 3 times and then left a message for me, but I couldn't get to the phone. I didn't have my cell phone with me, and I just couldn't get up. So I discovered I had ataxia, which means your body's breaking down, and I just knew something was wrong.
This happened a couple of years ago, right?
Right.
What was the course of treatment, and what was your period of time?
I was at Yale, New Haven for 15 days with my coma, and then I got transferred up to Gaylord, and they took me down and worked me every day, probably 2-3 times a day, getting up and going again. And then I was in therapy, learning how to talk again, amongst other things. So It was an experience I'll never forget.
And tell me the course of time in terms of how long you were at Gaylord, about when you were able to make your needs known better, walk better. Like, what would be the most intense period of it?
It was intense every step of the way, and I was at Gaylord only so long as my insurance was okay. And then I had to go on to another rehab center. So that I don't care where I go, just as long as I can walk again. So they promised, okay, I'll walk again. And I stayed at Gaylord maybe for a few weeks, and then I went off to the other facility for a few weeks. And then the rest was at home, and was very sleepy with my stroke. So I took it easy, and they said, you heal the most the first year. And then from there, you still do heal, but it will take you longer. So it's been an experience. And then from there, I went on to mentor patients at Gaylord Hospital. And I visit the stroke patients now. It's a wonderful experience working with the patients because they don't know me when I'm coming. And I said, no, you don't know me, but I had a stroke too. They look at me and they stare at me and they say, you did? And it was touching from one person saying, you're my inspiration. And that's what I want from everyone I visit, And another guy said, yeah, how can I look as good as you? So, So after all this, and I tell them it's work, but you can do it. You can do it. And from there, I went on and I did balance and Tai Chi and swimming and meditation. So it all helps.
And chair yoga.
Okay,
yes. Which is how we got connected.
Yes.
And what do you attribute your ability to heal so well to?
I think a lot of R&R, a lot of rest, and I have these wonderful dogs that helped me, and I wasn't sure I was going to get them back because they were all in foster. But my doctor said, oh, no, take one back. Well, he didn't have to tell me twice, and I did. And I think they're the best therapy that really helped me, getting them all back.
What happened to the dogs, like when you initially had the stroke? They were at home, right?
Yeah, my volunteers made arrangements, and they all went in foster homes.
Okay. And you were able to get them back?
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. I don't think I would have made it if they didn't make it.
So that gave you a purpose?
Yes.
And not that you didn't already want to recover, but a very singular focus.
You betcha. You betcha.
Because you knew they depend on you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. They're one.
Your strong interest and story tell us your story is far from over. So what thoughts do you have about how you can combine some of your passions and advocacy and your very personal experience with your health issue to move forward?
Well, that's an interesting question. Thank you for asking. It's all about the dogs. And I would love to go forward from this day on to help patients. It's all about the dogs and the patients and giving back from what I've learned thus far. That's where I'm headed.
Do you think Greyhounds have the potential to be therapy dogs?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I really would like to make arrangements with patients so they see what Greyhounds are. And I know when they visited me in the hospitals, patients were so interested in the dogs. They didn't want to see me. They wanted to see the dogs. So they're fascinated with dogs. To this day, they don't know what Greyhounds are all about. So I'd like to show them.
And I think you have shared that, and perhaps it was in the article that I read, in Europe, the Greyhounds have more of a normal life, even though they race. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's right. Yes, correct. They live at home with their owners, versus here they live at the track and in the crates, so have a much different life.
What could someone expect if they're interested? I know we're saying you have 3 dogs now, and it sounds like many dogs are going to pass through your life. when the Greyhound is first brought from the track, how does the process work in terms of getting them kind of used to being in a home?
Well, they don't know stairs. They don't know the first thing about stairs. Or they like watching television with you, too.
Okay.
And when they hear the telephone ring, they think it's a bunny at the track.
Okay.
So, the buzzer goes off and the dogs race. So these are, hysterical things to us. But they have no clue what home life is all about. But they very quickly learn what couch life is all about and retirement is all about. So
are they fairly low-key?
Yes, they're couch potatoes.
Even though they were racers. That's so interesting because that seems...
Yeah, people have
like
the disbelief that they're high-strung and vicious because it's same with the muzzle.
Yeah.
But totally untrue. Totally untrue. They would just want to go home and retire with you.
Okay, and retirement starts fairly early for them, right?
Yes, anywhere from 2 years on up.
And what's their lifespan typically?
Well, I've had dogs live with me till 14 years plus.
Okay.
So they have a wonderful long life. So considering they're a big dog too. You know, but we can get them for any adopter, anyone that's interested in whatever they like. You know, male, female, age-wise. So people from New Mexico drove down to see me and picked up a dog.
Really?
Yep. They were both doctors in Hartford, and they went on to New Mexico. And they said, well, they heard about me with the stroke. We'll help you out. We'll take another dog. We'll drive down. Well, okay. 2,200 miles they drove down, and they had to go back to the hospital. So it's wonderful, and they keep in touch.
So you've really had global reach.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes,
so your world became very big.
Yep.
Then it became very small, and you had to focus on putting one foot in front of the other.
Yes.
And now you're ready to branch out again.
Yes. Taking it easy and branching out.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you. Do you have a favorite saying you'd like to share before we close?
Just think of the dogs. Think of the Greyhounds. They're so deserving of life after the races.
All right. And it's never too late to begin again.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And that's what we all want to focus on.
Yes.
Eileen, this has been terrific, and thank you, Conan, for being a guest as well. And please tune in to hear other fascinating women on future segments of MidLIFE Matters. I'm Georgian Lussier, your host. Thanks for joining us.